Hi, me. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Hey,
Tanyo, that's
yeah,
a
how
new
are you?
name here. Welcome.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Likewise. Where you dialing in from?
Bulgaria.
Bulgaria. Bulgaria. Wow. I've always wanted to visit one of these days.
Yeah, it's great, especially for foreigners. I know a lot of US people come to visit. Some even live here from
Yeah.
time to time.
I hear it's beautiful. I assume you're coming in through the Never Search Alone community?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Good stuff. Hi, Vic. Let's let folks trickle in here over the next minute or so. Um, okay. What are you seeing, Jaime, as far as like just activity on the interviewing front and callbacks?
It's all about networking here in Houston, right? You can't get a job without a referral. So I'm working on referrals right now
Right
because
on.
I spoke with another executive recruiter this morning, and for the over 50 market, and he says over age 50 and over, and he's saying to us his advice is that we really need a referral for everything nowadays. So that's
Yeah.
how it is for us
Yeah.
50, or I'm very close to 50. So that's the and AI, not only with the election results, but the whole thing about underlying issues of AI and recruiting and HR is really what's driving a need for referrals and
Yeah.
really just putting the job market into a tailspin.
Okay. Okay. Tanya, how's the how are things looking in Bulgaria in terms of hiring and such?
Yeah. I'm looking for only remote jobs, and I have been working remotely for most of my career.
Okay.
And it's similar. Like I had like a few interviews and stuff, but nothing has moved forward. And I have been applying like to a lot of jobs, maybe over 100, 200 jobs in the past month and a half, 2 months. So it's been very slow in terms of
Yeah.
actual development.
And then you say when you say remote work, are you aiming to do work for like an American company or overseas
Yeah,
company?
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, got it. Got it. Yeah. Are you an engineer, by the way?
No, I'm a content marketer. Like,
Content marketer. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, cool. All right. So Jaime knows the spiel here. I do this every week, Tanya. I was working with the Never Search Alone community for the past year. I moderated two job search councils, and I've been recruiting now. I've been a recruiter now for going on 12 years or so, and
Okay.
um, and so what I found is that a lot of folks would benefit by sort of shedding some light on the recruiting process, the recruiting mindset, the recruiter mindset, and that way job seekers can better navigate their journey. So, hi Jennifer and Vic. Vic, if you could turn your video on, it'd be awesome. Come join us. The water's fine. All right. Um, Usually we have a bigger group here. I did make a change that's going to be a recurring change. Well, not a recurring change, but it's a change that will be recurring. Going from 3 o'clock Mountain Time to 2 o'clock Mountain Time every Thursday. And so I do this once a week, half an hour or so, just AMA. For the most part, ask me anything, and happy to sort of shed any perspective I might have around any unique situations you guys might be dealing with, or or whatnot, I do end up answering a lot of the same questions, which is fine. Because a lot of times I'll dig
Actually,
out some.
yeah, actually I cannot. I'm at a dentist.
Okay, no worries.
So yeah.
No worries. Um, yeah, I appreciate the just letting me know. I appreciate that. So anyway, bring to me your questions, your situations, and we can talk about it. I do have a job. How do I say that? It's a question board. Um, I do have a question board, and I'll pop that into the chat here if you guys want to jump in there. Otherwise, the group is small enough, so if you guys have any questions, just holler them out or put them into the chat, and that could be a little bit more expedient.
Yeah, could I just share my two-pager with you and you give me feedback on it?
Yeah,
Because you're like the first recruiter I have been talking to. I'm at
yeah.
that stage of
Okay,
the process.
so I do want to preface this that part of the reason why I'm doing this on a weekly basis is to sort of address questions that would benefit the most amount of people. And so I know as part of I know as part of the Never Search Alone um, sort of playbook, soliciting time with a recruiter is part of the process, is part of getting feedback on the Manukin or listening to her and all that. And so, but I'll have to defer those questions. Tanya, why don't you shoot me an email and I'm happy to take a look at it and provide you some sort of asynchronous email um,
Okay, yeah. What
feedback.
is your email just to make sure I get it?
If you registered, my email should be there. You should be
Okay,
getting
yeah.
emails from me. Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Eric at jumpsearchinc.com. Okay. All right. I'm just going to go off this question board if you guys don't have anything pressing or top of mind. Actually, before I go into that, I mean, let me ask, does anyone have any questions or any thoughts or?
Actually, I want to ask about
Sure.
like the referral question, because like I took one course by Ramit Sethi about finding jobs, and he says that a lot of jobs like aren't even announced and they're just got
Yeah.
from someone else. And I'm curious, like how to navigate that in terms of should I just apply to a job I like, or should I first reach out to someone? And a lot of times when I reach out to someone, they either don't respond or they're like, hey, just apply here. So there is no backdoor when in fact I
Yeah.
know there is, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Tanya, that's the trick. The trick is sort of finding that back door. Right now, the situation, at least in the United States, is such that, especially in tech, going to the front door, specifically applying on the website or applying on a job board, that's going to the front door, so to speak. And a lot of those channels are jammed up because there's just too many people applying. An abundance of talent out there, and so those channels are getting jammed up. Even for recruiters internally, they're getting jammed up. So they will prioritize somebody that comes in through the side door through a lukewarm referral, right? So you have to try to sort of sort of blaze those trails, so to speak, right? And you could do that through networking, figuring out. So here's what I'd recommend. If you find a job that is listed that is interesting to you, you can consider applying. But before you do that, I'd recommend searching your network to see if you have any first degrees or second degrees. And this is not rocket science, right? I mean, I assume that most people are familiar with this process. Figure out who the first degree or second degree of anyone that's related to anybody that might know anybody at that company, and use that as a starting point to sort of pave some trails. Hi, Arizo, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Um, and so yeah, so you have to create sort of your side doors, back doors into connecting, because that's helpful for the internal recruiter that has a stack of 500 resumes across a handful of positions, right? So that's what I
Hmm.
would recommend. And the other thing too is, you know, you have a unique situation, well, at least fairly unique, at least in this circle here that I'm doing each week, is that you're remote and you're looking for work in the United States. And so that right there is it can be pretty challenging. Um, and so yeah, I think, there might be some pathways in terms of working with potential agencies. I don't know if you're looking for contract work or full-time work. It sounds like it's probably contract work.
Yeah, both of these
yeah, or
work.
project-based work. So if you can, there might be agencies out there. In fact, I'm happy to talk with you about this offline. There may be agencies out there that you can sort of align with. Beyond agencies, there's also like there's a lot of communities that are springing up, and a lot of these sort of manifest themselves in like Slack groups, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Fractionals United is one example. There's sort of this trend around fractional work, especially at the executive level, right? Executive levels are fewer and far between, and so there's a lot of executives that have deep expertise in, let's say, operations, and they have trouble finding their next position. So they just put themselves out in the market as sort of a fractional COO, for example. And so they align
Mm-hmm.
themselves with a community like Fractionals United, where people share tips on leads for project-based or part-time or fractional work. And so Fractionals United is just one example, an example of one community that you might try to align yourself with, right? And so, yeah, again, that's all in the interest of sort of figuring out how you can get sort of side door access, because the life cycle of a sort of a job position or an opening, right, is um, typically a hiring manager gets wind of their hiring needs, and maybe they negotiate that internally, maybe at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
year or end beginning of the year, right? They're fighting for budget so that they can grow their team, and so they'll know about what they need over the next quarter, 2 quarters, next few quarters, right? And then they'll start telling people on their team, well, we have an opening, or we will have an opening at some point for this position. And usually the first thing people do is like, oh, I know somebody that could be a good position, a good person for this role. And so they'll go through that. And once that's exhausted, it's only later on that they'll be like, okay, well, let's post this position up, right? Because usually the hiring manager is one that's championing the need for that position,
Mm-hmm.
right? So yeah, to the extent that you can connect with folks that are prospective hiring managers and just sort of put yourself out there, you can get sort of leads coming into you. There's no silver bullet. It's multi-pronged approach and it requires persistence, so
Yeah, yeah. And what is the exact process? So let's say I find an interesting job and I reach out to someone in the company, either who I know or I know someone who knows someone at the company, and and I reach out to them and I ask them to like hop on a call or something. Like, what is the exact process to get
yeah.
the interview and stuff like that?
So first thing, let's say you do make a connection with somebody internal, and they could be one of, let's say, three types of people. They could be the hiring manager, they could be a
Mm-hmm.
recruiter, or they could be somebody of influence at the company, right? And what I mean by somebody of influence is they can help you navigate to the right person within the company and sort of put your name in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if you get in touch with the hiring manager and you get them to engage, that would be ideal because typically the hiring manager has the most weight in a hiring decision. Sometimes I would say maybe most times they have exclusive, uh, they have majority weight in terms of hiring decisions. So
Mm-hmm.
they're the ideal person to connect with, if you can engage them. And once you engage any one of those three, what I would recommend is not leading with, "Hey, can you get me a job?" Right? Because it's very off-putting. A lot of hiring managers get that all the time. A lot of recruiters get that all the time, right? So I would not lead with that. I would lead with curiosity and trying to find out like what some of their big. You almost have to take a consultative approach to it. Like, what are some of your biggest challenges? What's it like to work at XYZ company, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you might want to, it's just kind of like you're just building some sort of rapport and chemistry with them, right? Leading with curiosity and giving them a chance to kind of get to know you a little bit better, but very soft, right? It's not in a hard pitch sort of way because that's very off-putting. It's very off,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Do not lead with an email or a LinkedIn message describing your whole background and cover letter and making a case for why they need to hire you, because nobody's going to hire you from an email, but they might take a call with you. They might respond to you, but they're not going to hire you from a text message or from a LinkedIn message or an email. So you have to look at what you're trying to sell them on. So when you're hitting them up for the first time, whether it's text, whatever, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, email, you're trying to sell them on you're trying to get that micro close, and the micro close is getting them to respond.
Yeah.
Right? You're not trying to get a phone call with them, right? I mean, think about somebody trying to get some time with you, right? Your time is valuable, right? And so, imagine people just trying to bang down your door. Like, you have to close, you sort of get that micro close, so to speak. And the micro close is just giving them some sort of reason to respond to you. Because if they respond to you once, the likelihood of them responding to you a second time is higher, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you
Yeah, yeah.
engage with them in conversation, right? Don't just send your whole resume, everything to them and just blast it out. It's not going to work. It's not. Um,
Okay.
at least in my
And
experience. I'm
and
sure
do I
there's
do
edge cases.
that?
Yeah.
And while I do that, do I still apply, or do I just like either have to commit to one of those approaches, if that makes sense? Do
You
I have
can
to?
you can apply. So I mentioned the third person, right? You have hiring managers, you have internal recruiters and or external recruiters, and then you have just a person of influence at the company, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of subjective, right? A person of influence could be a CEO or a high-ranking person in the company, or they could be somebody that just is willing to help. I mean, regardless of their position, willing to help, and they know how to help you sort of navigate to the right person. Ideally, it's somebody that's been there for a while. They know the organization, which is especially helpful at companies that are larger, right? So a person of influence is somebody that ideally has a higher rank or a higher title. They've been there for a while, so they know how to sort of navigate, right? I mean, you think about uh, people have there's sort of social professional capital that one has at a company, right? And if you reach out to them, build a rapport, and they think highly of you, like, oh man, we need you on our team. I'll help you navigate and get to the right person. And if you getting hired, right, that's like social professional capital for them, right? And so
Yeah.
the other thing too is that depending on the company, they might have a like an employee referral program where they might
Yeah.
actually get compensated, like monetarily for for
Mm-hmm.
for um for a referral, right? And so most people I found that that's not the most that's not the primary reason to help because it's kind of a long shot generally speaking, it's kind of a long shot. But I found that most people are a little bit less incentivized by that, but they're just most incentivized for the professional social capital that they might gain if they brought somebody in and helping somebody
Mm-hmm.
that they've identified as, the kind of person that the company or team would need. So hope that
Okay.
helps.
And yeah, yeah. And both processes um, seem to me like very long, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah, it
from
can be,
from
especially
the
right now. So I think maybe I didn't answer your question. So whether you apply, I mean, do you apply or do you go try to figure out side channels, back channels? Um, I would say you do both. Where applying might disincentivize a person of influence from helping you is if you apply and that person of influence that you connect with really cares about the monetary referral bonus.
Mm-hmm.
By you applying in advance of them putting your name in the hat, they might not be eligible for that referral bonus because you've already applied. Does that make
Okay,
sense?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It makes sense.
But I would say, if the job has been around for like it was just posted an hour ago, apply. But if the job is posted weeks or months ago, the stack, the posting is probably a bit stale, right? And what I mean by stale is when people when a recruiter posts a job requisition, they usually wait a little bit for folks to trickle. In this case, they're not trickling in. A lot of times they're just flooding in, right? And so they go
Mm-hmm.
through these cycles where, let's just say they get 100 resumes in the first few days, or maybe even more, right? Then they'll go through
Mm-hmm.
that 100 or whatever, and then they'll go through a cycle of reviewing them and then sort of batching up a cohort. And once they have that cohort, they'll start to work that cohort through the process. Meanwhile, if the job position is still open, it's still taking applications usually.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so if it's been open for a few weeks, the recruiter's likelihood of them coming back to it, I mean, they probably should have closed it, right? But the likelihood of them coming back to it, it's probably it's probably less probable. It's less likely. So
yeah.
time is of the essence. If something is posted, um, I would apply to it as soon as possible. But if it's
Uh,
stale,
how how would you define stale? Let's say I see a job from last week. Should I still apply or should I look for a back channel? If that makes
that's a
sense.
good question. So I think LinkedIn, they used to have the number of applicants, like the precise number of applicants
Yeah,
listed.
yeah, yeah.
They took it off because I think it was demoralizing. And now it's just like, I think this job has more than 100 applicants. I think that's
Yeah,
their,
more than 100, more than 1,000, stuff like that.
yeah. Is it more than 1,000? So if it's more than 1,000, they'll tell you that.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, it's a judgment call you have to make. And, the risk is not, here's the thing, the risk of applying when something is stale is, I think, getting your hopes up that something will materialize out of it. So if your
Mm-hmm.
expectations are that, oh, I applied to these, whatever, these 20 jobs, the risk of applying is sort of the expectation, or sort of getting let down, right? Or thinking that something is going to materialize out of it when the probabilities might be lower than you think.
Okay.
So
Okay.
apply, but just take it with a grain of salt that it might just end up in a pile, especially if the job is stale or the posting
Mm-hmm.
is stale, and you can't just as a rule of thumb, just consider that you can't rely on the front door application.
Okay.
Go ahead and apply because it's pretty easy to apply these days, but just don't rely on it. If it's a
Okay.
position you're really gunning for, you gotta sort of blaze those trails with the back door, side channel, side door.
Okay. And last question. So a few years ago, I watched this video by John Oliver about AI and the role of AI in recruiting, and he said that like the first review is mostly done by AI, and there is some keyword matching and stuff like that. So how much of this is true? And like sometimes it feels like you're optimizing your CV and cover letter for the robots, if that makes sense,
Yeah, yeah.
before even a person sees it. So when does a person see your application? At
That's a
what
good question,
stage?
Tanya. So, one thing I would say is that I think this is my own personal opinion, but I think keyword optimization, I think it's old school,
Mm-hmm.
because the AIs now, they can read between the lines. And keyword searches, that's 2010, right?
Okay.
So in terms of trying to optimize your specifically for keywords, I wouldn't worry too much about that. I mean, it's an easy exercise now to do it, right? You just take your job description, take your resume, throw it into Chat GPT, have it make some recommendations about keywords that you can infuse into your resume, have it do it itself. I mean, you could do that in a few minutes. It's a pretty easy to do. But again, you have to temper your expectations of what you might get out of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that increasingly AI is going to be used for sorting and helping a human, like a recruiter, um, get to sort their stack and get to what they're looking for. And it's less about keywords and it's more about really the semantic story that your resume is telling, because the AI
Mm-hmm.
can read into that now, right? And so yeah, increasingly recruiters are using AI to make their job easier, especially as there's an increasing number of recruiters that are just getting more and more job. They're expected to handle more and more job requisitions, right? So they need to figure out how they can sort of get through their stacks more effectively.
But what's the role right now? So let's say I apply via LinkedIn or like one of the different HR solutions. I apply and like on the first like when does a person actually see the application, or do they even see it, or does someone else or AI sort it through? If that
Yeah,
makes sense.
based on what I've seen with the most of the mainstream um, applicant tracking systems, ATS systems, is that they are starting to integrate more and more AI into the process. But typically, what happens, let's say you apply to a job on LinkedIn or one of the job boards, typically what ends up happening is the company that posted, they usually have some sort of integration between those job boards and their applicant tracking system. So the way that the recruiter would see it in their system is it's as a queue, right? Let's say you have a job posting, they'll
Mm-hmm.
see it as a queue of applicants. They can drill into that queue and they can start to see if the AI is or if the ATS has AI implemented as part of its feature set, there might be some pre-sorting that's done in that stack, or maybe some measures or some scoring on certain dimensions of the folks in that stack, right?
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen yet, not to say it doesn't exist, but I haven't seen it yet where the AI is just ruling people out and it's completely automated. In fact,
Okay.
I'm sure that exists, even if it's just homegrown, right? But
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the ATS systems out there, especially the mainstream ones, they're a little bit shy about doing that because
Okay.
they're a little bit shy about doing that because it feels like they don't want to get this rep of, we're letting the bots make decisions that humans should be making, right? They
Okay.
don't want to
Yeah.
get that rap.
Okay.
So what I mean, the way they're trying to implement their features, their AI features in their ATS systems, is to really enable the human to get to what they're looking for much more effectively, much more efficiently, right? But in
Okay.
terms
Yeah.
of replacing the human to make evaluation decisions like rejection, at least from what I've seen, a lot of the mainstream ATS systems they're just kind of steering a little bit away from that.
Okay. So like for a hugely popular job, like of the, let's say, 1,000 or 500 applications are reviewed by a person.
Does that happen?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I find it like hard to believe.
And that's where some candidates makes the recruiter job easier because if somebody comes in through the side door because somebody that knows somebody and it gets forwarded to them, they're gonna almost guarantee you that that recruiter is gonna look at that person very quickly relative to the people that are in their stack
Okay, yeah, makes sense.
because there's some sort of trust or credibility trail there,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, makes
So
sense.
yeah, so if you can make it easier on the recruiter, empathize with the recruiter a little bit, that they're probably doing double the work. Most recruiters, let's say maybe 2 years ago, right? Most recruiters could internal recruiters would be handling, maybe 5 to 10 job requisitions. Again, this depends on level, depends on company, a lot of dependencies there. But um, now a lot of these recruiters are handling like double, maybe even triple, right? Because a lot of companies have slimmed down their recruiting teams. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's not just, there's a lot of recruiters that are out of work too, and
Okay, yeah.
so yeah, so they have to do more work now. And granted, they have some of these tools that are at their disposal, which are amazing actually. But yeah,
Okay, yeah. I appreciate the time, man. I don't want
yeah,
to
sure.
take too much of the call. I'll follow up with you for the email and stuff like that.
Yeah, go
And
ahead and email me, Tanya. And I appreciate your questions. I mean, they're quite valid, and some of them are pretty common, but it also gives me a chance to kind of maybe add a different nuance that maybe I haven't shared in the past.
yeah, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Jennifer, I see a message here. My understanding is that AI will be used initially to help reduce the stack of applications the recruiter is looking through from there. Yeah, I would say that's probably the most probable use case. We do that. Um, so we do some um, offshore virtual assistant hiring for domestic clients here in the U.S. And it's high volume recruiting, and we do leverage AI in terms of helping us to sort through some of those things. Oh, Tanya, JSC Slack. Rezo, are you a first timer here?
First timer here. Yeah, I wanted to, thanks
Awesome.
for holding these, by the way. And I wanted to join and kind of
Yeah.
get a flavor of what the conversations were like. I mean, I know we're over time, I think, but I have a quick question, and maybe if
Sure.
you answer it now or next week, that's fine. But just curious what your outlook is on the jobs market. Not asking from the political perspective of the elections, but just more that the elections are done now. Where do we sit? Are we going to, do you think no job, or the jobs growth will be slow until Q1? Q1 will be better. I mean, what's your personal
Yeah.
take?
I mean, obviously, I don't have a crystal ball, but I'll tell you what, I'll share with you what I think. Usually there's seasonality around hiring, and September and October tend to be sort of high activity times with respect to hiring and interviewing and all that. So, we're closing in on the end of the year here, and I would expect November and December for things to kind of slow down a bit, just
Mhm.
what I've seen in the past with respect to seasonality. Now that the election is over, I think that it's alleviating a lot of uncertainty for folks. And so I'm optimistic about the Q1 in the new year, and I'm crossing my finger and holding my breath. I'm hoping a lot of the work that we do is with tech and startups, and as you're probably aware, the past year and a half, 2 years has been really tough. There's abundance of great talent out there. Capital is flowing like molasses. It's like, and so nobody's hiring. They're hiring, if they are, they're hiring super slow, and there's just like decreased consumer confidence, which sort of trickles down or trickles up into decreased confidence on the part of companies. And I don't know about you guys, but I've there's a lot of subscriptions or SaaS-based subscriptions, whether consumer or business B2B, that I've scrutinized and I've sort of just dialed it back,
Mhm.
and that has a sort of a rippling effect, right? And so so I don't know. I'm optimistic about the future. I think it's been hard, but like I don't know. I think the stock market's up. I think there's other folks that are like, their confidence is increasing or increased, and so we'll see what happens.
Is that,
Um,
and that's fair. Like if you say, I mean, it's from a lot of the downstream hiring needs to start from a lot of the funding sources, which are moving like
yeah,
molasses. For me, it feels like, okay, now that the uncertainty of the elections is done, like will that increase to help fund, stream cash down here so that people will start hiring? Because that's been my experience, at least in the last like few months, that a lot of places I'm looking for product manager roles, and a lot of the places that have a high need for product management, even if they have the need, they have cash on hand, but they're not being as ready to spend it.
yeah,
Just tightening the purse strings a little bit. And so I've seen just that from that perspective alone. I just don't understand when there is a need, they have a need, a stated need, but they're just not filling the roles when that might turn around.
yeah. I mean, to your point about like just holding on to cash and being really slow about, you know, um, I think that's what we've been seeing for the past, at least I've been seeing it for the past year and a half, 2 years. And I think a lot of it has to do with confidence, consumer confidence, and the confidence on the part of businesses that, they can start focusing a little bit more on growth and hiring.
Mhm.
What I've seen, at least in the tech side, is there's been, or let's say the tech startup side, is that there's been an increasing focus on like just unit economics and profitability as
Mhm.
opposed to growth, which I think is sound anyway, right? But I think sort of that focus has prompted a lot of companies just to slow roll their hiring and their growth. But I think it's creating a good foundation, right? If they're focused on profitability and they can get their costs and their operational efficiencies in place, when the time comes where the capital will start flowing a bit better, it's a strong foundation, right? As
Mhm.
opposed to companies that are just hyper growth oriented and none of the unit economics makes sense. You just
Mhm.
throw more cash at that, and it's like, okay, well, yeah, they're just burning, right?
Well,
So
that's fair. And then they'd have to do the contractions, which leads then to these cycles of
yeah,
booms of
yeah,
hiring and layoffs.
yeah.
That's
So I'm
fair. And
hoping, yeah,
I appreciate kind of that perspective too, like what you were saying about the whole scrutinizing and even like subscription, personal or like B2B subscriptions that businesses make. really is just tightening that operating
Yeah.
model to maximize the revenue for now. So you're maybe right. That makes a better foundation for the companies overall.
Yeah, and so hopefully, as things start looking more up, yeah, I'm crossing my fingers and hoping things can get off to a better start for 2025. Looking forward to putting 2024 behind us.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I appreciate. Thanks for addressing that. I'm sorry when way over your normal time, but
No, you're good. You're good. I do this every week. Like I said, I think maybe before you jumped on, I do this every week. I was part of 2 JSCs that I was moderating over the past year, and past year. Um, and I found that just shedding some light on sort of the recruiting mindset mentality, and it would help folks sort of navigate their search a little bit more effectively. So
I appreciate it. I mean, I'm sure everyone does. That's awesome of you to do.
yeah, for sure. I appreciate it. All right. Well, small group today. I changed the time. It's 2 p.m. Mountain Time going forward. But I'm glad you guys made it. And if I can help with anything, bring it next week, and we can chat about it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank
Nice
you
meeting
all.
you.
See you next week.
All right.
Bye-bye.